Hi, this is Simon Obstall and welcome to another tutorial for Apple Motion. And today we'll be taking a look at this fascinating optical illusion. So you've got a chaos of small circles that come together to form a larger single rotating circle. So what exactly is going on here? The reality is that all of the circles are actually just simply moving in a straight line, and it's the magic of sine waves that brings them into harmony. And we can see that a little bit more obviously if we colorize the circles. So it's much easier to follow the colored circles than just the white ones. And you might be able to follow it even more easily if I just make the circles appear one by one, and it's much more easy to see that they're actually each traveling in a straight line. So it's a really interesting effect, and let's take a look at how it's done. So first of all, let's check out our project setup. I'm going with a 1080 square project for this, and my frame rate is 24 frames a second, and my duration is 15 seconds. Now that the frame rate, as I will explain later, is kind of crucial to how this is going to work. So if you want to follow along, make sure you do set your frame rate to this, not something else. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and take the circle tool and draw out a circle like that. Center it up, come over to shape, geometry, set that radius to 450. And I think I might just give it a bit of a fill and make that sort of, I don't know, something like that, dark grey. So then I'm going to make a new group above this. So this is just my background, so we can see what was going on here. And I'm going to take the circle tool again, and I'm going to draw out a small circle like that. And I think I'm going to turn off outline, turn on fill. Again, we need to make sure it's centered, reset, and come over to geometry, and let's set that radius to 30. Now what happens with this circle is it literally just moves backwards and forwards in a straight line to create this animation. So in order to do that, let's come over to its position, open up the position and look for the X, right click, add parameter behavior, oscillate, and let's set that amplitude to 415. And let's keep the speed at 10. So what is happening? The circle is moving backwards and forwards to the limits of the large circle, and it's doing that at a speed of 10. That means it's doing 10 oscillations per minute. I don't know why Apple have chosen to interpret speed like that, but that's what it's doing. So 10 oscillations per minute. And obviously the wave shape is a sine, and that's why this effect works, because it's using the magic of sine waves. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this group, and I'm going to make a clone of it. Right click, make clone layer. And then what I can do is I can take the clone and I can replicate it. So object replicate. So what we want is to have a circle, and the arrangement wants to be outline. The radius wants to be 0. Now the points, I'm going to go with 18. Then I'm going to come down and set my angle end to 180. You see where it's already starting to look quite interesting, but they're obviously all moving together. And the key to making it work, and I'm actually going to open this out a bit so you can see, this is the key control here, the source frame offset. And we want a source frame offset value of 4. And now you see we have our effect, and it works very nicely. I'm going to come back to my background here so we can verify how this is all working. And I'm going to add a line, hold down the shift key and draw it out like that. So it fits my big circle there. If we want to be absolutely accurate, we could come into the geometry, set that to 450, that to negative 450. We could come over to properties and make sure to center it up. And then we're just going to make it a little bit finer, so it's more, so let's go for width of 1, and maybe even just reduce that. Just want an indication, so bring the grey level down a bit. So then we can use this line to make a replicator, object replicate. Again, we want to use circle, we want a radius of 0, we want an arrangement of outline, We want 18 points, and we want an angle end of 180. And now you'll see that those lines accurately describe the path of each of those circles, and we can verify, in fact, that they are traveling in a straight line. Now, what happens at the end here is that we run out of, because of the offset, we run out of stuff to play back. So what I would suggest is you come to 12 seconds on the timeline or thereabouts and set mark play range out so that it doesn't play beyond that. So there you go. And then if you wanted to do something fancy, let's come to, say, sort of 3 seconds. What we could do is we could keyframe the speed. So let's go click on a keyframe there, speed of 10, and let's have a speed of 30 at the start. And you'll see it's all crazy, and then it resolves nicely into the circle. So I need to explain how these numbers actually work. You remember we ended up with an offset value of 4, and this is how we calculate it. The frame rate, as I mentioned, is a key variable. So our frame rate was 24. The number of points we chose was 18, and the speed was 10. So to get to our offset value, so the speed is calculated in cycles per minute, as I said. So obviously to get the number of frames, we need to multiply 60, which is 60 seconds, by the frame rate. And so in this case, we get 1440. So that's 60 times 24. Then what we need to do is we need to work out the length of the cycle, that sine cycle, in frames. So to do that, we divide this frames value, the 1440, by the speed value, and we get 144. And then to get the actual offset, we divide the cycle value by the number of points, which is 18, and then divide that by 2, and we get 4. So if you're wanting to use a different frame rate or different points or different speed, you need to go through this calculation. So supposing I had 20 points, you'll note that I end up with an offset value that's got a decimal. And although you can have decimal numbers for the offset, you'll find that your circle gets a little bit ragged. So I really recommend that you have values that lead to a full integer here. So for example, I could actually have 72 points there, and that would result in an offset of 1, and that would actually work. That would still be a nice circle. So let's actually just go with 36 points, and you see that gives us an offset of 2. So let's do that in our project. I'm just going to reset that animation of the speed that I did there. So as I say, we had 36 points, and that gave us an offset of 2. So come down to the source frame offset, set that value to 2, and you'll see that that actually is now still a perfect circle. Obviously, as we increase the number of points, we just need to reduce the size of the radius there, and obviously increase the distance, the amplitude of the oscillate. But that works perfectly. However, if we come back and say, okay, actually I only want 30 points, and that gives me an offset of 2.4. Let's enter that. So 30 points, offset of 2.4. You'll see that the circle is just not very smooth. And I think it's something to do with the way Motion calculates this source frame offset. Unless you give it an integer, it computes the values a little bit raggedly, and you don't get a nice smooth circle. So I hope that's been interesting. As you've seen, the sine wave is an amazing tool for animation and for creating extraordinary organic effects, but also if you kind of get the phase right, it creates some really remarkable patterns. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you again another time.